WDET is supported by the College of Business Administration at University of Detroit Mercy. UDM's Master of Business Administration is designed to accommodate the career needs of professionals across a variety of work organizations. More information at business.udmercy.edu.
It's the Metro on 101.9 WDET FM. I'm Tia Graham, and this week I'm joined by Malachi Barrett. Malachi is a reporter for Bridge Detroit, which is a partner of WDET. I want to say thank you and welcome for being here with us this week. What's happening on the show today?
Thanks, Tia. I'm excited to be here all week. This is going to be fun. Today on the program, we're going to talk about President Joe Biden stepping down in his re-election bid and throwing his support behind Vice President Kamala Harris. We're going to talk with WDET's Stephen Henderson about what this means for Democrats and how Detroiters are interpreting the moment.
Plus, blight has been an issue in the city of Detroit for decades, but there's been a lot of blight removal over the last few years. We'll speak with the city of Detroit's blight czar to understand how the city removes blight. But first, Detroit residents rely on cars, but car payments make it harder for people to be reliable. That's because Detroit residents and Black Michigan residents in general pay more on auto insurance than other state residents. That's according to new reporting from Outlier Media and the Markup, which found that 5 years after auto insurance reform laws were passed in the state, Michigan has the 6th highest auto insurance rates in the country, and Detroit residents in particular pay $5,300 a year on average, some of the most in the state. Detroit Mayor Mike Duggan was pivotal in helping to pass the auto insurance reform law, hoping it would save people over $500 per year. But that's not the case for most Detroiters and Michiganders, partly because insurance companies still group insurance risk by geographic territory for their customers, and because they account for customers' credit scores. To talk now about the story and why Detroiters and Black Michiganders pay so much for auto insurance, we have two guests with us. Koby Levin is the senior science reporter with Outlier Media who has been reporting on the high cost of auto insurance. Koby, welcome to the Metro. Or is this a welcome back?
It's a welcome back. Thank you so much.
That's what I thought. Welcome back. Also with us today is Melissa Love. She is a Detroiter who's been paying through the nose for auto insurance, and she lives on the west side near the Chatsey Condon neighborhood, West Grand Boulevard in Buchanan. Melissa, welcome to the Metro.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Awesome. So, Koby, jumping in with you, you took a deep dive into auto insurance costs for Detroiters. What you got and your team at Outlier started on this journey? What was something that you got from it?
Well, that thing that got us started comes in the mail every month, or by email in my case. It's that massive car insurance bill. Detroiters all know about this. Folks are paying through the nose. And we just started asking ourselves, what has changed, if anything, since 5 years ago? We were promised, hey, these prices are going down. They're going to take zip code out of the equation for us. And maybe what hasn't changed. So we got involved with the Markup. It's an amazing nonprofit newsroom that focuses on technology. And they really dug in to what the insurance industry has been up to since those reforms.
And you found that Detroiters and Black Michiganders pay a lot more for car insurance than others in other states. How much more money on average are they paying?
Well, put it this way. The median Detroit household is going to spend $1 out of every $7 they earn on car insurance. That's a huge amount compared nationally. If you look at comparable cities, think like Cleveland, St. Louis, no one is close, okay? So Detroit's insurance rates are at the very highest place they could be in the nation, right? But then within Michigan, and this is really the key point for this story, Detroiters and Black communities in general are still paying a whole extra premium for their home address.
And what is the best explanation for this difference that you all are seeing? What was something that really stood out?
So we really actually wanted to focus on the end of the equation. You know what I'm saying? The insurers said to us, well, look, it's we can't tell you how we calculated these rates exactly, okay? But there's a bunch more ingredients than just people's home address. Certainly, race is not a factor here, right? And we couldn't actually check them on that, right? Like we don't know what's in their private calculations. However, we know what the result is. And the result is that Black communities in Michigan are paying a whole bunch extra for where they live. This is not the way they drive. This is not the car they drive. It's not how old they are. It's not any of that. It's their home address.
Right now, we're chatting with Koby Levin, the senior science reporter with Outlier Media. He helped do a big report on why auto insurance rates are so high for Detroiters. And also with us right now is Melissa Love. She is a Detroiter who's once again been paying a lot for auto insurance and also impacted by these insurance rates that Detroiters see through their email, like you said, every single month, Koby. So, Melissa, one of the people Melissa. So, what has been your experience with car insurance payments?
My experience with car insurance payments have been very hectic, stressful, especially, being a single mother with 6 children and can barely pay for rent. How can I pay for insurance? So with me not having insurance, I have to, ride the back streets to duck and dodge, just so I won't be able to get my car took, so I can transport my children back and forth to where they need to go.
And oftentimes when I'm a Detroit resident my whole life as well, when we think about the stress and the burden that comes with that, when you don't have car insurance or you have the lack of access to certain things pertaining to your vehicle, if you could just go into it a little bit, the added pressure and stress that it puts on you, especially being a single mom, especially having kids you got to transport every single day. If you could, once again, go into that extra pressure that's added on your head every single day as you're getting into your vehicle.
Really, it always stressed me. So it's like now I don't even think about it because I got extra stuff to worry about. Rent is $1,000 for 2-bedroom. 6 children is a lot. No father, so I have to provide food. I have other things to do than to really worry about insurance. But then when I get in the car, it makes me worry about it. So it put me in some type of anxiety, I want to say, because it's like it's so much. It's so much on one person.
Exactly. And I think a lot of people, I think that's one thing that's missing is the extra burden, the stress, the anxiety that comes with it, the mental anxiety, once again, that comes with it.
Absolutely.
So, Koby, just bringing you back into the conversation, it was one of those things that we've been thinking about here. We talked about it a little bit as a group. Based on your reporting and based on the things that you were seeing, are people being charged more because of where they live? There's certain neighborhoods that they live within the Black communities, or maybe the proximity they are to Black residents? Or is it based on things happening in those neighborhoods, like the accidents or the break-ins? Like, what are you seeing there?
Right. So we looked exclusively at the effect of where you live on your rate, right? And what it comes down to is that that additional amount that you pay based on your address is much higher if you're living in a predominantly Black community. That's not just Detroit, right? Okay. What a lot of folks have said to us is, oh, well, it's crime rates. It has to do maybe with various. There's like a towing scam in Detroit that somebody mentioned to us. People come up with all kinds of Detroit-specific reasons that prices should be higher, right? But if you're someone living, way out there on the west side, right? Maybe you're close to 8 Mile. Maybe you're an older person, a very cautious driver. You're someone who's never been in an accident. Your neighborhood looks a lot like the neighborhood that's 10 blocks away from you on the other side of 8 Mile. You're still paying way more because you live in Detroit, right? And that's what it comes down to. It just is a big generalization, right? Mm-hmm. That if you live in a Black community in Detroit, you're at high risk. And I think there's a lot of folks in the city that know that that's not true for them. They've gone 20 years without an accident, right? They're not dealing with car theft, right? That this is not an omnipresent thing in our lives. If we live in the city, we understand that, right? And yet, what we're hearing from the insurers is, well, when we put all these variables into our system, what we come out with is a rate that's just higher for Detroit, and we're sorry about that, but there's nothing we can do, right? And you just have to ask, if the effect is that Black communities are paying more, how did we get here?
How did we get here? And it was going to be one of my questions, was the walk back, because you wanted to go through the result. You see the result here of what the insurance, you see what we're dealing with. What was the back way? How did you go backwards to try to figure out, you know what I mean, the reporting? What was the back?
Ooh. So I wish that we had our partners at the Markup here. I'm not even going to lie. Things got technical for a second there. We did follow along, though, as they basically went through every rate filing, where insurers explain how they create their rates, and they reconstructed those from scratch using kind of, sample Detroiters, right? And so the idea is that you can see step by step how each component of your rate is added on. Mm-hmm. And we focus just on that one line, that location, right? And that is where when you plug in your address, they're going to, add a multiplier, right? They're going to increase your rate by a certain amount. And what it showed is when you add that, once you go through that step in the algorithm, all of a sudden people's prices are through the roof, right? And so we did that for I believe the 7 largest insurers in the state. And the results were pretty consistent. Most of those insurers are focusing in, right? And this is an important point. It's not just, they're not going, most of them are not going by county. They're going really local. And you can see on the maps, the pricing maps, you can just see the outlines of Black communities, right?
Yeah, and you talked about it just a little bit earlier, but how did rates for Detroiters compare with residents of other cities like Grand Rapids, Flint, or even Dearborn? So Detroit does tend to be, the location effect, I should say, in Detroit does tend to be higher, right? But it's in Flint, for instance, in Benton Harbor, we saw a large effect. It's also quite a bit higher. Yeah. And Melissa, just bringing you back in really quickly, right now we talked a little bit earlier, and we talked about it just now. You don't have car insurance as we speak right now. What has it been your experience shopping around trying to even find something that's affordable?
Oh, it's horrible. It's nothing affordable out there. Mm-hmm. It's not. With me not having a license, that make it worse. Yeah. And then like Koby said, the zip code. My zip code is more of a Black dominant, neighborhood. 4821. It's rough over there. So because I came from 6 Mile in Wyoming. So, and I tried to get insurance over there, and the rates were completely different.
Really?
So, yeah.
In what way? Higher or lower?
Lower.
Lower over at 6 Mile in Wyoming?
Yes, the University District. Mm-hmm. 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 So it's a different area, if you get what I'm saying.
100%. I grew up on Joy and Southfield, and those rates will be tremendously higher than they would be in the University District. So 100% understand some of the things that you're going through. So if we talked about insurance rates right now and what you could possibly afford, if you could afford a monthly rate, what would it be?
What I can afford, honestly, monthly, between $500 and $600.
Wow. Okay, and that is still quite a bit.
That's still a lot.
Well,
still a lot.
Yeah. No, hold on a second. $500
well, I say
per month.
Per month.
Yeah.
Yes.
And that's still just an insanely high rate, right?
Yes,
like we got to be clear that when we're talking to folks in the suburbs, we're talking in the $100, $200 range, right? And even that is on the high end nationally, right? And so, I mean, you said, Melissa, that you had gotten a quote, right? Mm-hmm. And what was that number again?
That number was extremely high. It was $3,200, I believe.
Yeah, and that's probably 6 months?
For 6 months.
$3,200 for 6 months.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah. And,
So,
and I had a
numbers.
2005 Chevy Impala.
I'm sorry.
I mean, no, I know, but it's just like it's astronomical to think
what
about
I'm
those
saying.
numbers and those rates for 6 months premium.
Never got into
05.
accidents.
Yeah. And it's just, once again, you think about the things that are happening to people, just like Melissa, and it's just like, what can be done? Representative Rashida Tlaib has introduced legislation that would take the cost of car insurance payments into account when calculating government benefits, but it doesn't solve the issue of auto insurance being so high. So this is for you, Koby. Is there any appetite from state lawmakers to change the law? Do you see anything happening right now? Any movement, any talks?
I think folks recognize that the cost that Detroiters bear is still extremely high. It's a serious
As
issue.
you can hear.
Serious issue for folks, right? Like Melissa can attest to this. Heck,
Yes.
I can attest to this,
Yeah.
right? I mean, our monthly bills are simply, a significant part of our calculus of how to move through life, right? And that's just not. It's not like that just about anywhere else in the United States. Most of the lawmakers who are currently representing Detroit were involved in the auto insurance reforms of 2019. And when we talked to them, they said, "Oh, that worked well. We actually solved this problem, right? We took because they did ban the use of zip codes, right, in setting rates. What we found is that that doesn't work. If you ban just zip codes, car insurers are still able to find other ways of setting rates based on geography. They can just use a smaller unit or units that are even almost identical to zip codes but are just called something else. You know what I'm saying? So it's a big loophole, and car insurers drove straight through it.
That's it was one thing that you put in the article, and it said like the same thing for motorcyclists. There was a loophole there because it wasn't the name of the motorcycle or something like that. So their rates stayed extremely high and were not saved by the law change. So this is very intense conversation. We can go on and on and on and continue to talk about it. But before I let both of you go, I want to say thank you both for being here once again. Has this affected your ability, Melissa, to stay in the city of Detroit?
It has, absolutely. It has. It affected my ability to stay in the city of Detroit. Because it's like, well, I could just go to Farmington, to get cheaper insurance, and I don't have to stay in Detroit, So, but it's like Detroit residents, they're losing. You're losing the good residents, So.
Yes, I can hear that 100%. Yeah. Koby, one last thing. Has the mayor or any other city council members wanted to take up the issue?
We asked them about our findings and got a universal no comment.
I think that's enough said. Koby Levin is the senior science reporter with Outlier Media, and Melissa Love is a Detroit resident on the west side who's been paying a lot for auto insurance and hoping for something better very, very soon. Thank you both for being here with us, and we would love to continue this conversation on.
Thank y'all.
Thank you.
Coming up, we will discuss what it means now that Joe Biden has dropped out of the presidential race and thrown his support behind Vice President Kamala Harris.
WDET is supported by the College of Business Administration at the University of Detroit Mercy. UDM is offering a new Master of Science degree in ethical leadership focused on sustainable, ethical, and inclusive problem solving. Admission is open to qualified applicants with a bachelor's degree in any field. Course selection is flexible, with no prerequisites, 4 required courses, and 6 electives. Learn more at business.udmercy.edu.
To the Metro here on 1019 WDET FM. I am Tia Graham here with Malachi Barrett of Bridge Detroit. Malachi, what's going on?
Let's get into it. So this weekend brought some news that paradoxically felt inevitable, but also pretty stunning in the moment. We all know on Sunday, President Joe Biden announced that he will no longer run for re-election. Biden has stepped down as the Democratic nominee, and he endorsed Vice President Kamala Harris to succeed him. She now must adopt the enormous responsibility of uniting her party and defeating former President Donald Trump. Here to talk about this with us and the challenges ahead for the Democratic Party, we have Stephen Henderson. He is host of WDET's Created Equal and also executive advisor to Bridge Detroit and a host on Detroit PBS. Stephen's here to talk with us about how Biden's decision changes the dynamics of an already pretty crazy race and how Detroit voters are reacting. Stephen, welcome back to the Metro.
Hey, Malachi.
All right, so tell us how we got here. This movement within the Democratic Party to call on Biden to step down seems to have accelerated pretty quickly since the debate. But Biden was also seemingly pushing back on this until Sunday. So what really changed?
I don't think anything changed in the last week. Really, this has been developing for some time. As all of us have known, the debate was kind of a turning point. I think there was a real consensus among party leadership that he should step aside as much as a week ago. But then you had this assassination attempt on former President Trump right before the Republican National Convention. My understanding is that the timing was supposed to be closer to that, to kind of overshadow the Republicans, take a little attention away from them. They waited another week. I think the pressure just continued to build. We saw some more people come out publicly last week talking about the need for Biden to step aside. So I don't know that there was much choice in this instance. You have donors who have said they're going to sit it out. You have polls that say traditional Democratic voters, big parts of the base, were not excited about this. You had to do something different.
Harris pretty quickly received the backing of some prominent Democrats and Michigan lawmakers. Governor Whitmer this morning added her endorsement. How is the party reacting to this?
It's a very organized reaction, and I think that tells you something about how long they have been thinking about this. The number of people who have come out so quickly and said, "I'm going to back Kamala Harris," and unequivocally so. The number of people who are potential candidates for president who have said, well, you know what, I'm not going to do that. Our own Gretchen Whitmer, who lots of people have talked about as a potential candidate, has said really quickly, I'm staying in Michigan. That doesn't mean she won't be a vice presidential candidate, but that's a different question. There's no question that the party is coalesced around the idea of doing something different and sending a unified message as quickly as they can to turn their attention to the general election, which is the one that really matters, right? Who gets the nomination is one question, but you do have to be able to mount a fall campaign that really takes aim at former President Trump, who is ahead in the polls right now.
I got a few phone calls from some friends on Sunday when this news broke, and they all basically had the same question. They were like, what do I really need to know about Kamala Harris? I think there's like a broad perception that she's kind of unpopular, and her background as a prosecutor seems pretty key to that, but I kind of wonder how familiar the public really is with her. And I don't know. I mean, what are some key things to know? What are some of the holdouts saying maybe about her vulnerabilities? What are her strengths here?
So, her background as a prosecutor is something that I think is going to stand out among Democrats and Democratic voters. She's going to be portrayed by Republicans as this kind of loopy liberal figure from California, but she's not that person. She's a pretty conservative criminal justice, part of the criminal justice system, somebody who was Attorney General of California and has been a prosecutor in other contexts. We don't know Kamala Harris very well, to be honest. We know her as vice president, which is one of the more disfavored political jobs in our system, right? You don't get to really do anything. You don't get to define yourself. And that's one of the challenges over the next 4 weeks before the convention. She's got to define herself. Who is she? What does she believe in? What does she really want to do if she's going to be president? And is that going to play with the Democratic base? She's got some advantages, right? She is an African-American woman. There was a poll out last week that showed that President Biden had lost 30% of the support he had in 2020 from black women by this point this year. That's it. There's no way to win an election if you do something like that. She's also somebody from California, one of the more successful liberally run states in the union. They're going to play that up. What works in California? What could work nationally? But we're going to get to know her over the next 4 weeks in a way that no one has gotten to know her so far.
Last thing I'll mention, I mean, this news comes after the RNC. It comes after someone tried to assassinate the Republican nominee, and then he was coronated in a convention that was really focused on unity. Criminal cases have kind of fallen through. Feels like Trump has a lot of momentum, and Democrats are kind of resetting their game here. How do we think Harris will step up in this moment to bring together a party that, could be kind of confused and unsure about the future?
Well, I mean, the early endorsements are the first step, right? Everybody coming out and saying, this is our person, let's get behind her. She's then got to, conduct a process of wooing the delegates who will be at the convention next month that looks inclusive, right? That looks like she's really listening to people. You have a lot of uncommitted delegates from states like Michigan, people who didn't want Joe Biden principally because of the war in Gaza. What does she say to them? What's her pitch to them to commit to her in a way that they weren't ready to commit to Biden? And then these soft parts in the base, African American women. What's her outreach look like there? It's going to be a little easier for her, I think, than some of these other constituencies, but she's got to do that. The election, the entire election, turns on independent women. Right? These are the voters who are not showing up in the polls right now, who are sitting it out, trying to figure out which side is most appealing to them. That's why Trump's numbers have stayed where they are. I mean, he's not going up in the polls despite what you would classify as pretty big wins for him at the debate and the convention. It's why the Democrats haven't been able to surge ahead of him. She's got to focus on what they want and getting it to them in order to catch Donald Trump and pass him if she's going to win.
All right, that's Stephen Henderson, host of WDET's Created Equal. He's also executive advisor to Bridge Detroit and a host on Detroit PBS. Stephen, thanks for being with us.
Absolutely.
It's the Metro on 101.9 WDET FM. You just heard from Malachi Barrett and Stephen Henderson. Today, there's a high of 82 degrees with cloudy skies and a chance of rain in the afternoon. Tomorrow, Tuesday, partly cloudy with a high of 85. Wednesday, hump day. Expect a chance of rain and thunderstorms with a high of 84 degrees, and the rest of the week's looking pretty good. Highs in the low 80s, mostly sunny skies. Coming up on the Metro, we'll talk about the city's ongoing efforts to remove blight and beautify neighborhoods. You stay right there. The Metro on 101.9 WDET FM. I'm Tia Graham here with Malachi Barrett, and later on the show, Malachi, we're going to talk about the Belle Isle Slide reopening Friday.
That's right. I survived. I rode it for the first time in my life at a 30-year-old man, and the body held up. So feeling good about that on a Monday.
Hashtag I survived the Belle Isle Slide right here on the Metro. However, if you live or drive around Detroit, you may notice there's less junk around, less tires and debris littered across vacant lots. According to recent city numbers, since 2014, more than 25,000 blighted houses were demolished, and over 17,000 Detroit Land Bank Authority homes have been sold or rehabbed. And a lot of that cleanup has occurred over the past 2 years. That's partly due to Mayor Mike Duggan's Blight to Beauty initiative. That project tries to improve the appearance of properties throughout the city. And the initiative focuses on 14 priority corridors, addressing blight and holding property owners accountable for cleaning up their lots. To tell us more about how the Blight to Beauty initiative has been going, we have Katrina Crowley here. Crowley is the Assistant Director of Blight Remediation for the City of Detroit General Services Department. Director Crowley, welcome to the Metro.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. So as a blight czar, I love that, the blight czar, what did you inherit when you began Mayor Duggan's Blight to Beauty strategy?
Well, first, people call me the Blight Czarina.
Czarina?
Yeah, so I got that name from a former director. Yeah, they started calling me the Blight Czar, and she says that just doesn't fit. So they started calling me the Blight Czarina. Yeah. So Mayor Duggan's strategy is very intentional. My first task was to get a hold of or get an understanding of out-of-country and out-of-state owners of vacant properties. They are the worst. You know, if you don't have skin in the game, if you don't live in Detroit or the metro area, and you brought up some properties as an investment and you do nothing. So a part of our strategy is a 3-layered approach. And so we wanted to go hard on enforcement, DAH, which is the Department of Appeals and Hearing. The law department has its part to play. And then my side, on the general services side, is the remediation portion. So we wanted to change the landscape of what you see visually. We know how important it is for our young people as well as our seniors to walk out and see beauty, right? It just changes the whole mindset of how you feel about your community. So we were very intentional to go after, like I said, out of country and out of state commercial property owners who did nothing with their properties.
And it, you talked about, just the well-being, the feeling when you see a clean and clear spaces. You think about also property value and the way that people can, if they can sell their place or rent their place, whatever it may be, it helps improve so many other things and, than just beautification, which is very important as well. So what are the different types of blight violations you see around neighborhoods?
All right, so let me back up to go forward.
Yeah.
So I strategically handle, or my jurisdiction is commercial vacant properties first, right? Because if we can get the commercial vacant property owner to pay attention to their property, it helps the properties that may be occupied. So some of the things that we see with commercial vacant property owners is the mango fences that are falling over into the right of way. In the city of Detroit, you're not supposed to have razor wire. We're not a prison. Okay. We're a city. And so razor wire is only permitted in industrial areas. And so we saw a lot of commercial property owners having razor wire. That's the type that cuts you. We're not talking about barbed wire. We're talking about razor wire. Just dangling and hanging, that's a safety and a health hazard, of course. We see owners who have high grass, tall weeds and grass as tall as I am, and I'm 5'1" and a quarter. But some of the vacant property owners, you see what you see, and you hide trash in that, and then it's a safety issue. Who wants to walk down a street where the vegetation or the foliage is as tall as you are or as tall as your child? So that's another big area. Signs, projection signs that are on vacant buildings that hang over the right-of-way that may be coming off of the building itself. And those pose a risk that we should not tolerate or allow to exist. So those are some of the things that we look to change the landscape. Other things we go after, of course, there's a big illegal dumping initiative in the city. That's one of my
questions, yeah.
Yeah, and so, if you get caught illegally dumping, that's a $25,000 fine. Don't quote me on that. I think that's the fine, but $25,000. And there is a task force. They dig in the weeds and try and figure out where the dumping came from, so that they can properly go after who does the illegal dumping.
Yeah, one of my things was why was there such a dumping culture here? Why was there such an idea that we can come to the city of Detroit, from wherever we are, and just dump in a vacant lot?
So I think it's a mindset. For so long, Detroit was just looked at as in a negative light, and so people thought that you could do anything that you wanted to do in the city of Detroit. That's not permitted. As small as putting up nuisance signs on utility poles, which is not permitted, or just coming into the city and saying, oh, here's a vacant lot. I have construction material, or whatever the case may be, and let me just deposit it there, versus taking it to a proper and legal dump site where you pay a little bit of money to make sure that you are not causing any kind of environmental issues for our community. So we hope that mindset is changing with our initiative to make sure that we employ the three-pronged strategy. We have minimum success. Everybody says we've had a lot of success. I look at success based on what the senior citizens tell me. I love going to meetings, and Miss Johnson or Mr. Jackson will say, well, what you gonna do? And then we have that dialogue and that conversation, and they say that they're seeing some change. Yeah. And change always, to me, brings about hope. And so you hope people will replicate seeing things tidied up and clean and things like that.
I love it. Right now we're chatting with Christina Crowley. She's the Assistant Director of Blight Remediation for the City of Detroit General Services Department. And, what does it cost if the city has to step in and do the work? So I'm thinking about when you find it, you're going through the process, you're going through the steps, you see the person there, you see what's happening, you give them the code, the fines. They're still not responding to you. What's happening then?
Yep. So that's a part of our accelerated strategy. So we like to definitely have the owners reach out. Everybody is not in a blighted situation because they want to be in that situation. So there are opportunities along the continuum for folks to reach out and say, hey, I need more time to take care of this issue. We always tell folks, make sure you get in contact with your inspector. The inspector from Building Safety, Engineering, Environmental Department, also known as BSEED. They are the ones who are charged with writing the ordinance violations out of our ordinances for the city, out of our blight ordinances, so to speak. Mm-hmm. So if you ignore, and I always tell people, please don't, if you ignore a notice of blight violation, because you always get an opportunity. So typically what happens is an inspector goes out, sees that there's a series of blight violations that need to be taken care of, right, by the owner. The owner is typically given a certain amount of time to correct all of the violations. And if they don't, then you get a ticket. And that's when you see me and my team. So from that ticket, if the owner ignores it, doesn't call the inspector, or for whatever reason doesn't correct the situation, then we come in, our general services department, as well as our vendors. We come in and we remediate all of the tickets. So it could be a sign, it could be peeling paint, it could be high weeds, overgrowth, it could be tires, the place is just a mess, right? We come in and we remediate. We then take our invoice and we pursue that owner through the Department of Appeals and Hearings. So we get our invoice and our exhibits, before and after pictures, and they can be quite striking, right, to that hearing. And then a hearing officer will adjudicate, and then our invoice becomes a part of the judgment that needs to be paid.
I was really interested to hear you guys had looked around to track basically the property owners who are outside the city, outside the state, outside the country even. So what can you tell us about what you found there? I mean, how much of the vacant land in the city is owned by folks who don't live here?
Well, so let me back up to go forward. So when we look for out of country, we're looking for vacant properties with a structure. Why? Because a structure can degrade and so cause all kind of problems that falling bricks off of the second story and all that kind of stuff like that. So we wanted to get a hold of those owners first as a priority.
To prevent demolition even?
To prevent demolition and or accelerate demolition if you're not going to do anything. Mm-hmm. If you're just going to hold on to property waiting for, I don't know, $1 million sale when your property is really worth $5,000, we're not, we're not motivating people to just hold on. You got to motivate them to do something. You got to take care of the property or dispose of the property or take down the property yourself. So back to your question. So we first looked at out of country. It wasn't as many as we thought. I thought that the worst buildings would be owned by out-of-country folks because, again, we don't think they have skin in the game. But that wasn't the case. Now, there were properties that were owned by out-of-country, but we began to find that by state, we had New York, I think, was the most in terms of out-of-state property owners of vacant properties. I used to know the top 5 off the top of my head.
But could you tell us, like, what is the percentage maybe of the vacant land that they own? Like, how much of the vacant land is held by these folks?
So I wouldn't know how much vacant land. I could just speak to you with regard to vacant properties with a structure.
Yep.
I would say from out of country, maybe 10%, and then maybe the top 5 states, maybe another 40.
Wow. So
maybe,
basically half of these structures we're talking about.
Yeah. And then the rest are owned by people in the state of Michigan, right?
Wow.
Portfolio holders who live somewhere in the state of Michigan.
That's a whole conversation we can
That's
have.
a whole nother conversation.
I'm also curious if you could just give us an update maybe on the effort to enforce abandoned vehicles on city streets. We've been getting some questions about that as well.
Well, so that's not my initiative, and I don't want to speak to it because I don't want to, say something wrong. But
People
I can
think of it as blight. That's why
it
I was
is
wondering.
blight,
Yeah.
and the mayor has an initiative for that, and there is a whole task force that has to report on a weekly basis on what's happening with regard to abandoned vehicles, abandoned boats, and guess what? Abandoned RVs. Just all over the place.
And what I love so much is, we're going to reach out to the city and hopefully have someone on to talk about the vehicle, the blighted vehicles that we see around the city of Detroit, and hopefully have them on this week so we can kind of get an update on that as well. But Katrina Crowley is an assistant director of blight remediation for the City of Detroit General Services Department. Director Crowley, we have so much more to talk about. We're going to have you back on the show so we can really dig into what is going on with the mayor's initiative and how far you've all come in those last 2 years. But thank you so much for being here with us on the Metro.
Well, thank you so much. I appreciate it. Appreciate being able to talk to the audience and you too as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
This is the Metro on 1019 WDET FM. And like we referenced, Malachi, we're going to be talking about the Belle Isle Giant Slide, which opened up Friday. You were on it. A few folks from WDET were on it. And it's exciting times to hear about if you all flew off or not,
It was a beautiful day out there. There were a lot of folks who were excited, a lot of young kids, and a lot of skeptical older folks such as myself.
I love that so much. We'll hear about that coming up on the Metro. You all stay right there.
Welcome back to WDET. We are here in the studio to talk about the reopening of Belle Isle's Giant Slide. This is a big deal for a lot of Southeast Michiganders. The slide is viewed as really wonderful to many, a lot of childhood memories, but it's also ominous for others because in 2022, the Giant Slide had scared a lot of folks when viral videos of participants flying through the air shot around the internet. And after going through some safety renovations, the slide is now open again to the public. It reopened Friday from noon to 4:30, and over the weekend it's open from 10:30 a.m. to 3 p.m. So we are going to talk about some of the excitement of the slide opening. We have WDET assistant producers Sydney Walkley and Anel Scott here. They were at the slide's opening on Friday. Sydney and Anel, welcome to the Metro.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, thanks.
So we're going to start by playing some audio of people who were at the slide on Friday.
It was pretty fun. I was a little scared at first when it started speeding up because I picked the fastest side, which is on the left, and it was like I was going down so fast, but it felt, at the same time it was really fun. I think I'd rather go again.
It was like very fun. My heart dropped, but it was very good. It was a good experience.
It was nice. I recommend 100%.
That was Julian Cook, Nairi, and that was Julian Cook, Nairi Kennedy, and Anaya Booth. Sydney, what was the atmosphere like on Friday? How many people showed up there, and how are they responding to the reopening of the Giant Slide?
I don't know how many people exactly were there, but it was definitely crowded. Many food trucks, a long line outside the slide, and then people were riding it several times. Full families there picnicking out with the food truck food. And I've never been to Belle Isle myself, so it was an exciting experience to see this slide, and I think it lived up to the hype. I've all heard about it.
I know there were a lot of people who hadn't been on the slide in decades. We had talked to some folks when we were out there. They'd been on as a kid, but it had been a while. I want to play a cut from someone who was reminiscing about the last time they were on the slide. This was Albina Mensai.
Excited? Yes, I am. I'm very excited. I used the last time I was here when they were open. I was a little girl, and it was magnificent. And I can't wait to get back up there again.
So what was the reaction like to folks who maybe it's their first time being back in a while?
Yeah, there's a lot of nostalgic energy, I would say. As you said, many people hadn't been on the slide in decades, and they were able to take their families out and experience it all together. There are a lot of new families there to experience it for the first time together. So it was a lot of fun. I think a lot of people were excited to experience it again because they hadn't been there in decades.
I mean, part of why we're talking about this is because of the viral attention that it got in 2022,
absolutely.
Right?
Yes, and I think a lot of people were nervous. Some people were actually nervous that the slide would not be as fast as it was, a couple years ago. But I think a lot of people had a lot of fun. I think it did live up to the hype, I would say.
Did you see anybody yeeting themselves off the slide as expected, or
yes.
was it? Yeah?
Actually, a lot of 40-year-old men were yeeting themselves down the slide. Some people did get stuck, but it was all about how you went down. Some people, if you were able to lean back, it seemed like people were going faster that way. But some people got stuck. Some people were flying.
Yeah. So let's hear from one of those folks who got stuck. This is Danny Covington talking about how slow the slide was moving.
It looks like it's running a little slow. See people getting stuck on it. So we'll see, though. Hopefully they get it moving for me.
It's funny, this balance between people wanting it to be safe and then some of the Mavericks wanting it to be a little,
yes.
Faster. Is there a proper technique to using the slide to stay safe? How are you actually supposed to go down?
Well, I feel like you just have to make sure you keep because you go into a burlap sack and you just have to make sure you keep that on and tighten it around your stomach so it doesn't fly off of you while you're going down. Because some people will get air, and if you lean forward, they told us, you go faster, and then rather than if you sit up straight. So I feel like a lot of people were falling forward going down the slide, and it caused them to fly down and catch some air. It was a lot of fun.
I think about yeeting. You just said that, and a few folks in the studio are like, what the heck was that? So yeet, basically we're going to use it in this context of being shot out of something or flung out of something or going really, really fast. We're going to use that as the definition of it today.
Yeah,
but
it's a verb.
Yes, we're going to use it as a verb today. But go ahead.
Well, you guys are here, obviously, in one piece. No missing bones or arms or legs. What was it like for you guys to take the ride?
Ooh, I was actually more nervous than I thought it would be going up there. It is a big slide, but once you're going down, it's a lot of fun. You might catch some air. It was a lot of fun. Definitely a little nerve-wracking, though.
Yeah, and we were going to try and film ourselves going down, but then they're like, no, you'll lose your phone. You're going to let go. Throw that in the sack so everything's safe. And it was a lot of fun. And our one coworker, she got stuck halfway down, unfortunately, and then we flew down. I guess it all depends on how much you just go for it.
Absolutely. Malachi, this is you wrote it too. So what was your experience like?
Look, I'm not going to lie. My heart was kind of up in my throat for a minute there. There's a big initial drop as you come down. And then it slowed down for me quite a bit. And by the end of it, I stood up and walked the last couple of feet. But that first, it's high up in the air. You feel it. This thing is registered as an amusement ride. It's no joke. You're
yeah.
I don't want to estimate how many feet but it felt like you're hundreds of feet in the air.
Yes, when you're up there, it feels like everything looks so small.
Well, thanks, guys. This is WDET assistant producers Sydney Walkley and Annelle Scott. Thanks for joining us on the Metro to talk about the Giant Slide on Belle Isle.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
That's the Metro for Monday, July 22nd, and you can listen to recent episodes online at WDET.org, and make sure to subscribe to the podcast on your favorite platform. The show is also on YouTube if you like listening that way. But first and foremost, Malachi Barrett from Bridge Detroit is here. Malachi, thank you for an awesome Monday. Looking forward to Tuesday.
My pleasure. This is a lot of fun. Excited for this week ahead.
Exactly. The show is produced by Sam Corey, David Lyons, and Jack Philbrandt. Additional production by Anil Scott and Sydney Walkley, who you just heard from, who wrote the slide. Our engineer is Nate Bender, and music's done by Sam Bobian and Will Sessions. The Metro is a production of WDET, a listener-supported service of Wayne State University. If you like what you hear and you want to support the Metro, consider becoming a member at wdet.org/donate. This is WDET-FM, Detroit Public Radio, your connection to news, music, and conversation. Thank you so much for listening, and we will be back tomorrow.
WDET is supported by the College of Business Administration at University of Detroit Mercy. UDM is offering a new master's degree in ethical leadership focused on sustainable, ethical, and inclusive problem solving. More information at business.udmercy.edu.